Holy crap, everyone. This one is going to be a long one. So it is TWAB for November the 18th. Now, I'm just going to say it straight up. This one is the sandbox TWAB, which is what they say. Supers, melees, grenades, class abilities, everything in the melee grenade abilities, exotics, everything in that thing. So there's a lot to go through, so might as well just start. So, before we dive in, details customary have TWAB discussing what's going on in the realm of Destiny. 30th anniversary is out on December 7th, which happens to be 19 days from the publication of this TWAB. In-game, there's plenty still to do before that, but of course, next Thursday is Thanksgiving here in the States, blah, blah, blah. As much a very light TWAB next Wednesday. So this one is the long one. Now, there are buffs, there are nerfs, then there's tuning levers we've recently unlocked with back-end changes. There are clear separations between PvE and PvP. Now, there is lots of stuff talking about changing the thing. Now, I'm just going to skip over all the talking. So, basically, one of the big changes they're coming up with, in the 30th, the ability cooldowns and stuff, they are starting to tune abilities separately from other abilities. So, one grenade will not be similar as to another. Now, they're not changing how they work. Mostly, they're just changing their details and their stats. So one thing that they give us as an example for a change, the Flux Grenade, the sticky grenade for Arc Hunters. They increased the base cooldown from 82 seconds to 182 seconds, so it's much longer recharge. This is specifically in PvP, I do believe. Increased attached detonation damage from 150 to 250 one-shot kill in PvP. Increased PvE damage to combatants by 15% on top of its original damage increase. Removed projectile tracking, so it's just a standard sticky grenade, but added a small amount of aim assist. The throw speed is increased by 117%, and now it sticks to all surfaces, so it's a straight-up sticky grenade. But I do believe these changes are all PvE and PvP right here. But that is a lot of reworks and buffs, making it hopefully better and at the same time not as dependent on. Now, another similar change they cover is the Firebolt Grenade, and it changes in the opposite direction. Instead of a heavy buff, it's a slight nerf, where the base cooldown is reduced from 82 seconds to 64 seconds, but the damage per bolt has been reduced from 90 to 65, and of course another PvE damage increase. I will warn you, there's a lot of changes that's meant to nerf it in PvP, but increases its effectiveness in PvE for this. The Firebolt Grenade has a low cooldown time, especially at Tier 10 Discipline, as it all has low damage output. These kinds of varied cooldown power outputs should make the game feel more dynamic and give more depth to build crafting. Now, basically, there is a lot more that's going to be coming that they're going to cover. They basically show how every ability, it'll tell you the base cooldown right off the bat from the subclass menu and various other things. Character training, you'll see the actual cooldown based on strength and ability, but I will warn, they do mention this soon, the base cooldown is like here, Tier 3 of relevant stats, strength, discipline, etc., which, believe it or not, they actually do mention that if you're lower than Tier 3, it is actually negative effects. Say if the base cooldown was 130, if you had Tier 1, it might be 145 seconds. Just as a example. Now, as well, cooldown times for class abilities are not currently displayed due to a technical issue. Fix to plan that in the future. Now, this is the variable ability cooldown system. There are going to be big changes coming for everything in systems. Stasis, 30th anniversary, Void 3.0, and all that. And there is a lot of things. Now, for example, we increased all grenade damage versus PvE combatants by 15% or more. There is big changes that they do. But, of course, going throughout everything, there is a lot more to be changed. Now, more talking, and let's see, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is covering supers, how super is going to be changing. Now, things they want goal-wise. In PvE, super uptime should be relatively unchanged from the live game, if not slightly higher. And everybody should at least get one super in a 6v6 match that goes to either the score limit or time limit. Basically, if you win by getting the high score, or by just running out of the time, if they engage in regular combat. Now, supers should be less frequent in 3v3 modes than in the live game, where 2 supers per match is a fairly regular occurrence. As well, primary play should have a noticeable benefit in super energy regeneration. Different supers should come online at different times in a given match, and your super of choice should have an impact on how quickly it regenerates. This is the kick in the teeth for a lot of other people coming up. So, basically, supers have tiers, and depending on the tier, it has its own unique cooldown time in comparison to other tiers. Now, we'll get into this. Basically, Tier 5, fastest regeneration. We have things like Well of Radiance, and they do mention soon it'll also be Bubble because it is support-based supers. And as well, at tier 4, we have Blade Barrage and Silence and Squall, which are shoot once and they are burnt. Tier 3, we have things like Shadow Shot, Burning Maul, Arc Staff, Nova Bomb, Thunder Crash, more unique, less roaming supers. Now, as well, Tier 2 is Golden Gun, Chaos Reach, Nova Warp, Storm Trance, Daybreak, Sentinel Shield, some of the better roaming supers, as well as Tier 1, the slowest regeneration, being Spectral Blades, Fist of Hammock, Cavern of Soul, Glacial Quake, and Winter's Wrath. So, basically, everything as you see here, this will be the tiers as to what base, unaffected, no mods, no nothing, no killing, is the slow and the fastest regen of every ability. These are the stats we shall be seeing come December 7th. Now, as well, they do keep it down a little bit. Now, weapons are the primary way players engage in combat and PvP. Non-super abilities accentuate or augment the combat, but should rarely solve an encounter by themselves. Abilities have clear strength, weaknesses, and counterplay. Build crafting is rewarding with the moment-to-moment combat loop of Destiny. Basically, they're saying abilities should not be the main focus of your combat. At the same time, let's see, we have tuned PvP energy regeneration separately from their base PvE values, which are not changing. Now, these changes are not happening in PvE. They stressed that several times coming forward. But the important details. Now, subclass neutral game perks. These perks have their ability regeneration reduced by roughly 50% in PvE. We have targeted perks that can either activate out of combat with single button press, or those that were returning amounts of energy that were significantly out of band. So these abilities that are either easy or just generally restoring their own ability energy that they're changing. Whisper of Shards, Arc Web on Stormcaller Warlock, the Rising Storm perk on Stormcaller Warlock, Ionic Traces on Stormcaller Warlock, as well as Electrosec Surge on Stormcaller Warlock. Now, those are being nerfed in PvP. I will reiterate, PvP. Aftershock for the Striker Titan has been nerfed. Inertial Override for Striker Titan. Benevolent Dawn for Dawnblade Warlock. Practice Makes Perfect for Gunslinger Hunter. And Dark Matter for Voidwalker Warlock. All of those perks are being scaled down a little bit. Now, these perks that they're now talking, they scale down energy returns as you get killed in PvE. Basically, you kill something, you extend your super a little bit. These have been roughly cut in half. Everlasting Fire for Dawnblade and Trailer for Striker Titan. The way they explain it is now you'll get diminishing returns way faster. So it takes way less kills to get the minimum amount of energy back. So you'll be running out of your super much faster. As they cite, it is a bit annoying when you're killed by the super and then killed by the same super when you respawn on the other side of the map. This is to hopefully adjust that so you only get killed by one super in your life. Now, exotic armors they're starting to pay attention to. These are their PvP nerfs. Frosties no longer stacks multiplicatively in PvP with other regeneration buffs, and now is an additive scaler. And basically, they still work, they're just not going to be as effective with other ability regen things. Now, Heart of Inmost Light, ability regeneration scaler reduced by 50% in PvE, or PvP. Reworked so activating multiple abilities now reliably results in multiple empowered stacks. The stacking behavior was previously a bug, but this seemed like a good opportunity to promote it in a feature. Now, Contraverse Hold, duration of the grenade regen buff is no longer randomized between 1 and 4 seconds and is now a fixed duration of 1.75 seconds. And they've reduced the ability regeneration scaler by 50% in PvP. The previous average was about 1.71 seconds, with a 1 second low being the most common, so this should improve its consistency across the game with a lower return in PvP. Now, as well, Doomfang Pauldrons, reduce super energy gain on activation when killing opposing players killed by a void melee by 50%. No change PvE. Shinobu's Vow, reduce grenade energy gain on players versus hits by 66%. Counter Tempest, this one is a safe one. Grenade, melee, and super energy regeneration scalar buff duration reduced from 7 seconds to 4 seconds in PvP. So they will still do exactly the amount of return amount, it's just shortened in time. Now, as well, the big one, the Stag, reduced class ability refund on shield break by 50%. So the shield or the Stag meta might actually be falling a little bit for trials nowadays. Now, the armor mods. These armor mods have reduced energy returns by 50% in PvP depending on the number of copies of the mods you have slotted. And they list as follows: Melee Kickstart, Grenade Kickstart, Utility Kickstart, Perpetuation, Bolstering Detonation, Focusing Strike, Bomber, Outreach, Dynamo, Distribution, Momentum Transfer, and Impact Induction. All of those mods that are basically do an ability or do something, you get ability energy back, they have been cut in half, so they will not be as nearly effective. Now, there is, like I said, a big foundation shift. There is going to be a lot of things going on. Now, continuing forward, this is some specific things. Stasis crystals have been buffed and reworked a little bit. Now, strictly, while forming, stasis crystals now slow nearby players instead of freezing them. They still freeze PvE combatants while forming. So, stasis crystals from things like the upgraded dust field, the what's it called? Man, why am I blanking on the name? Glacier grenade. They still freeze in PvE, but they slow in PvP. Increase slow freeze radius while forming from 1.75 meters to 2.6, so they freeze and slow in a wider range. Reduce crystal detonation damage versus players by 55%. So when crystals break, they don't do nearly as much damage. As well as crystal detonation in PvE damage crystal detonation damage in PvE being increased by 60%. As well as crystal detonation radius being increased from 6 meters to 8. So basically, PvP, crystal's way less lethal. PvE, way more lethal. Now, getting into specifics. For Hunter, the dodge has been adjusted a little bit. The Hunter dodge no longer breaks projectile tracking, regardless of which dodge. The Marksman dodge specifically, at tier 10 mobility, has its cooldown increased from 11 seconds to 14 seconds, as well as the base cooldown unchanged at 29. Now, the Gambler's dodge, its tier 10 mobility also increased from 11 seconds to 18, a bit more of a heavy nerf, as well as the base cooldown duration being increased from 29 seconds to 38. Now, Revenant, as you guessed, the changes earlier are going to apply to this, but they basically recover it. Shatter Dive, much less lethal versus players due to stasis crystal changes. Much more lethal versus combatants due to stasis crystal changes. Increased shatter damage, so breaking, versus frozen PvE combatants by 100%. So Shatter Dive is going to be a mean thing in PvE, actually, in terms of just flat out damage. As well as the Grim aspect, or the Grim Harvest aspect, getting an extra fragment slot, so all you hunters can rejoice that your Agar Scepter Crazy Super build has one more fragment you can throw into the mix. Now, moving on to the next one, Top Tree Arc Strider. Combination Blow, the arc melee for Way of the Warrior. The base cooldown was reduced from 96 seconds to 15. So it is pretty much guaranteed that if you're using this before, you're going to be using Gamblers. Now they're going to allow you to actually use Marksmans and not feel regret for not making use of it. Now as well, Bottom Tree Night Stalker, the Vanishing Smoke melee has low damage output but high utility. This subclass tree is struggling in PvP, so they decided to increase how often Pathfinders can go invisible by reducing their cooldown from 96 seconds to 75. That is the smoke bomb that makes you go invisible in PvP for other people. Now, the Titan nerf, this one hurt home most, but it is one of the things. Shoulder charges, they hit them hard. Now basically, all shoulder charges no longer one-shot players. Every shoulder charge no longer one-shots players. I'll say that again just to get it through. Now as well, it's a little bit easier to start with sprint activation time reduced from 1.5 to 1.25 seconds. With increased range, I believe that's melee range, from 5.5 meters to 6.8. As well as the targeting cone width increased by 10% and increased damage versus PvE combatants by 25%. Now, specifically for all three of the subclasses, Seismic Strike, the Arc shoulder charge, AoE damage reduced from 90 to 40, but it now blinds enemies in the area on hit and increased base cooldown by an extra 8 seconds. Now, Void shoulder charge, AoE damage from 90 to 40 as well, base cooldown from 82 to 90, as well as the Solar one, Hammer Strike, reduced direct impact damage from 170 to 120, and base cooldown from 82 to 90. Now, if you're wondering why the AoE effect is changed, because the AoE just sets people on fire, as well as melting points them, it's a little bit different. But direct, if they had left it as before, it would have still one-shot because of the burning. This changes to make sure that it can't one-shot by burning, but it will still burn. Now, barricades have been adjusted a little bit. The Towering Barricade has been increased for cooldown a little bit, as well as the Rally Barricade being decreased for a little bit. So basically, they're still trying to get us to use Rally Barricade, even though it might not still be anywhere near effective as what it was. Now, specific changes to Behemoth coming up. Now, Diamond Lance, increased fragment slots from 1 to 3, now spawns a Diamond Lance upon these kills. Killing a PvE combatant with a stasis weapon. So, Agars, Vulpecula, Fractitheist, Reed's Regret, all 4 of those will drop a Diamond Lance on kill with Diamond Lance. So, get your builds up. Now, as well, killing 3 players with a stasis weapon and a single life will spawn a Diamond Lance. Killing an enemy with a stasis ability, as well as shattering an enemy with a stasis ability, likely. So Diamond Lance should be popping up more in the wild. They were not exactly useful now, or they weren't useful as is, but now they might be a little bit more potent to the point where you can make an Agriceptor build for Titans. Now as well, Shiver Strike increased Shiver Strike damage while in Glacial Quake by 50%, so the main punch of Glacial Quake hurts way more. As well as the Whisper of Chains increasing damage resistance versus PvE combatants by 25% to 40. It's weird they mentioned that in the Behemoth tree, considering this Whisper, I believe, is all 3 classes, so it might just be more effective on Titans alone. By the way, Bottom Tree Striker, Knockout, the melee lunge range and damage bonus now deactivate after a melee kill. So if you ever go into trials and you see that one Titan slide shotgunning and meleeing everybody who just literally slide shotgun punches, slide shotgun punches, slide shotgun punches, it's because of Knockout. That will hopefully not happen. He'll only be able to kill the first person and then get the second person. Then he'll lose that crazy melee range. So hopefully that is tuned a little bit. As well, mentioned before, Trample, the super energy gain from Fist of Havoc light attack now decays to a minimum amount over 3 PvP kills, down from 7. So it takes 3 to get the minimum diminishing returns instead. Now, Frontal Assault melee increased base cooldown from 82 to 106 seconds. Fist of Havoc heavy slam radius reduced from 8 meters to 6 meters. Bottom tree only, specifically on bottom tree, which I believe is Juggernaut, which makes sense. It's not meant to be so damaging. That's what Earthshaker is for. Now, changes to Warlocks. Now, you remember how a long time ago Warlock melee was slower, so it got more range? Well, that's been changed because they finally fixed it. Now, their melee range is reduced to match Hunter and Titan, but the suppression timer after melee means you can now melee back-to-back at the same speed as the other 2 classes. So Warlocks finally have the same melee as everyone else. They can stop complaining about it. Now, Metal Tree Voidwalker changes to Handheld Supernova. Reduced damage versus players. Now deals 105 max damage, or 150 max damage. But the damage versus champions and bosses has been increased by 30%, as well as projectile range increased by another 2 meters, and now pushes targets away from the Warlock on detonation. So hopefully Handheld Supernova is nerfed in PvP again, but beneficial in PvE as those need. Now, Nova Warp, increased damage versus champions and bosses by 30% again. So Nova Warp is a little bit more beneficial. You might actually be able to use it in GMs. Haha, not really. Now, another change as well to Shadebinder specifically. Now, Winter's Wrath, reduced shatter pulse damage versus enemy supers. Must now generally freeze and shatter all supers twice to eliminate. Now, you recall back a while ago, this nerf was introduced once before, but it was only for a few supers. Things like most of the Titan roaming supers, Fist of Havoc, Sentinel Shield, the Glacial Quake, things that were not so easy to kill. They were made so they had to shatter them twice. Now, every single super, regardless of how squishy, Golden Gun all the way to Ward of, well, I wouldn't say Ward of Dawn. Well, maybe Ward of Dawn if you're in the thing. But basically now every super needs to be shattered twice to kill it. As Shadebinder. Let me emphasize, as Shadebinder. Now, Penumbra Blast, increase proximity detonation damage versus PvE combatants by 100%, so it should be easier to actually hit things nowadays. And Bleak Watcher, this one's going to be a weird one, so I'll sound this out slowly. While Bleak Watcher is equipped, all stasis grenades charge at Glacier Grenade's rate. So, let's say if Glacier Grenade was 30 seconds, Duck's Field was 40, and Cold Snap was a full minute. Now, if you have Bleak Watcher equipped, basically all grenades charge. I'm not sure if that's the I'm not sure if that's making a Bleak Watcher or just its recharge ability, but basically all grenades are like Glacier Grenades when you have Bleak Watchers equipped. Now, that is everything they wanted to say. There is more coming soon, hopefully. We'll get full patch notes in the future about what is actually happening with all this stuff, because I don't believe that Flux and Firebolt Grenade change is all they're doing. There's going to be more changes. I think every sticky grenade is going to be a one-shot, but we had way more cooldown, but way more damage. At the same time, there's not much more in here. There is more things about Destiny 2 leaving Xbox Game Pass. I will stress Xbox Game Pass, you'll lose all of these things right here. The expansion Pacific Raid Dungeons, Hunts, Exo Challenges, Nightfall, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff right here. You'll lose access to Destiny on... well, Destiny is free to play, but when Destiny 2 leaves Xbox Game Pass, you do not have access to any of those things right there. Now, as well, they do mention it is still available on PC Xbox Game Pass, so it is still there. But Witch Queen will not be available on Xbox Game Pass for PC when it launches February 22nd. Now, there is some more things about Xbox blocked players. Since crossplay launched early this season, we see Xbox players report that they've seen a lot of blocked players on their roster screen when they haven't blocked anyone. Now, yeah, so if you want to fix that, they give you some instructions on how to do it both online and offline, but of course, known issues. There's only one that is brought up. This is one I've seen several times. Sometimes the revive timer can reset during a Grandmaster Nightfall when players complete an objective or enter a new area of a strike. Now, let's pretend we're in a fight. We're in the tank room of Proving Grounds. My friend dies. He is in a very inaccessible place. We have to do the whole room solo. Or do as two people. Now let's pretend we kill the last tank. It gives us the continue on thing, but there's still ads in the room. It would reset my friend's revive timer to the 13 seconds it is when you die, and then my teammates both get wiped because his was reset, and when we went to go get him, it was reset. We got killed. Basically, this is aware they're working on a fix for it for random reset respawn timers. Now, of course, more movies of the week and everything. Don't really play those just because weird. Artist of the week. This one's a cool one. A nice, cool-looking Taken Hunter, which, even though it's technically not possible, it's still cool. Now, as well, other things, a Eris Morn fan art, which shows her, I don't know if it's gaining her acolyte eyes or losing it. I'm not sure, but she has 3 glowing eyes. That does look very cool, though. Now, of course, that is the end of everything between everything that's been happening. This was a long one. I'm just going to leave it at that. Keep this as short as possible. That is all the important things that dropped with this TWAB. My name is Matt Scorpion, and I will see you in the next video.